guys, welcome back. It's Josh with the Financial Advisor Car Guy. This week we're going to talk about some bargain or budget supercars that have been, I would say as of late, a lot less expensive all of a sudden. So we're going to dive right in. I've got 3 cars to talk about, and we're going to talk about each car just real briefly. I mean, I think they're probably cars that you've all heard of and have seen. And then we're going to talk about maybe if your budget were to be a little bit larger, what that could look like. So we'll dive right into the first one. The first one is what graces my garage every day. It's a 2009 Audi R8. I'm gonna go ahead and pop a picture up of each car as we talk about it, and I'm gonna put the years on there as well, because each of these cars have different generations, they have different options and all that stuff. So what we're gonna talk about with the Audi R8 is gonna be the first generation, most likely pre-facelift. We're gonna look mostly at V8 cars. These are cars that can be had for under $75,000. Now, you can find them with salvage titles, and I would say that about all 3 of these cars we're gonna talk about. If we're talking clean title, good history, no paint work, those types of things, that's kind of my assumption. But if you wanted to really get to the bargain basement, you can find an Audi R8 that's got a reconstructed title with high mileage for really below 60,000. I mean, we could probably find one in the 50s without too much effort. So, again, talking about just a good clean title, good condition, running, driving, no problems, turnkey car, an Audi R8 first gen, a V8 car is going to be the budget supercar that really can suit any driver. The car is all-wheel drive. It's a fantastic, fun car to drive, looks good, gets attention. It does everything that you'd want a supercar to do, and it's designed to be daily driven. So it's got no real quirkiness to it. It's just like jumping in your A4, your A6, your Q5, any of those things, right? I mean, it's literally designed to be driven. If your budget does go up a little bit, we're gonna talk about an alternative to this car, which probably is obvious, but we're gonna get there. The next car we're gonna talk about before we talk about upping the budget, pretty much for the same budget, $75,000 to $80,000, somewhere in that window, you can buy a Mercedes the AMG GT. And again, I'm gonna post a picture here. This is a very fun front-engined supercar. It is an exotic car built by Mercedes. It is their premium sports coupe, fun, fast car, looks really good. They've built a couple different, like the R8, they've had a couple different generations. The GT, the AMG GT, it is a very fun, very cool car that can be had under 80,000, but if you have no mileage restriction on your search, in theory, you could get a car that has 50, 60, 70,000 miles for way less than that. We're talking in the 60s, again, salvage title with maybe some issues or really high miles, maybe even in the 50s. That's about as good as you're gonna get. These cars haven't depreciated that far, but I don't really think they're gonna get much lower. I would tell you that with the R8, we're probably really close to the bottom, even though the market's kind of funky right now. Even though, interest rates are high, all these cars have V8s in them. All these cars are really, really the finest caliber V8 sports car, muscle car, exotic car you're gonna find. And so this Mercedes it's got a throaty exhaust right out of the factory. They're good to tune. They're not that common. I mean, like an R8, you're not gonna see them every day. You're not going to see them at your local car meets all the time. They're a fun car that's sort of under the radar, and they're finally getting budget friendly enough that if you've got $70,000 to $80,000 to spend on a supercar, a Mercedes is a pretty good choice. Now, I've never personally owned a Mercedes, but from what I can tell about these cars, what I read, what I see, they're really built to last. So these are cars kind of like German engineering Audis. They're gonna go a long time if they're maintained correctly. So if you have a Mercedes dealer nearby or an independent shop that works on Mercedes, you can get a long, long life out of these, AMGs, and they're good looking too. So the third car on this list is gonna be the first generation Ferrari California. Now, what's funny about this car is that it's kind of, when it was released, it was the lowest Ferrari on the totem pole. It was kind of the cheap Ferrari, if you will. There were much higher, more high-end, expensive versions of Ferraris at the time when these were introduced. It is a front engine, not a mid, right? So it's already got a lot of Ferrari enthusiasts want a mid engine. They don't necessarily want a front engine, and if they want the front, they want the big V12, because that's what they did, right? They put the big V12 in the front in these GT cars, these big Grand Touring cars. And so this was a very compact car. In fact, it came with a hardtop convertible. You couldn't get just a solid hardtop, and you couldn't get a soft top. Every one that they made had a hardtop retractable top, whereas both the AMG and the R8 have hardtop and soft top versions. The hardtops are fixed hardtops and the soft tops are the convertible. The Ferrari is unique in that it's got a hardtop convertible. Every one of them does. So you don't get a choice. You can never put the top down, or you can always keep the top down. But regardless of the fact is you couldn't buy a coupe or a convertible. They were all the same. So the thing about the Ferrari too is that it is not as long from a life standpoint, long lifespan of a car. I've seen them with six figures on the odometer. So 100, 110, 120, 130,000 miles. But once they start to get up there, they really require expensive maintenance. So one fascinating feature, if you're a Ferrari enthusiast at all, you're going to know this. But over time, Ferrari has gotten a lot better about routine maintenance. As these cars have gotten more widely distributed, more mass produced, okay? They're not individually serviced and hand built the same way they once upon a time were. They still are to an extent, but they're much more mass produced. So this was the first Ferrari that was really, I would say, mass produced on a budget. This was kind of an entry-level Ferrari, and that's okay because they're awesome cars. They can be had for roughly $75,000. I've seen them as low as 70, as high as 100 still. But if you find one maybe with modest miles on it, we're not talking 2,000 or 3,000 miles. We're talking like 30,000 miles. Yeah, you're looking at something around $75,000 or $80,000. And quite frankly, it is a very cool looking car, I think. Now, I've never sat in one. I don't know. I'm 6'2". I don't know if I could fit in this thing, but it's a very cool car for really a reasonable amount of money. If I had a Ferrari California sitting next to an Audi R8, I kind of think the scale would tip towards the Ferrari just for the allure of having a Ferrari, right? If I can buy two cars that are the same price, which am I going to pick? Again, you throw the AMG in there, and now you've got all three of these cars that are really on a racetrack, probably very close to one another. From a handling standpoint, probably pretty close to one another. I would say they all compete pretty closely for one another. But again, I'm 6'2". I fit in my R8 like a glove. I fit perfectly. The seat's not even all the way back. I have room. I could be 50 pounds heavier and 3 inches taller and probably still fit in that car. So from that standpoint, I know and trust the R8. I don't know enough about the Mercedes or the Ferrari to just jump in and say, I'm going to trade in this R8 for one of those, because I've never sat in one. So all that, it's to be considered. You definitely want to make sure that you're the right size for a car, if that makes sense. Okay, so those are the three cars. They're all fantastic. They can all be had around 75,000, give or take. But let's say your budget's another 25,000. Let's say you're wanting to spend closer to 100. All three of these cars have a fancier version. So the R8, we talked about the V8 version, okay? They also build a V10. The other option is having a gated manual transmission. So a gated V8 is going to run somewhere closer to 90,000 bucks. If you want an automatic or a Tiptronic V10, those can be had for 90 to 100 grand. Maybe less, again, if you've got really high miles. And again, you can have it in a hardtop or a convertible. But the V10 is going to add another 20 to 30% onto the price. And again, If we're looking at a modestly driven with modest miles, probably not modded, we're talking stock cars here. You know, a lot of them are black, a lot of them are white, a lot of them are gray. If that's okay, then you might be able to get it a little less. But if you want a unique spec or a unique color or a unique interior, again, you start adding exhaust and wheels and all these other things, yeah, you can get up to 100 grand or more pretty quick. And a gated V10 is probably another 25,000 on top of that. You're looking at 100 and a quarter, 130, 140 for a well-maintained low mileage example of those. So those are still very, very expensive. You can also get into a second gen R8 for about that price, 130, 140. But again, that's quite a bit higher than where we started at 75 for an entry level. If we move into the Mercedes, they have the AMG GTS, which honestly, I've seen a high mileage one as low as $80,000. So if that miles don't scare you, you can actually squeeze the GTS into that lower budget. But generally speaking, GTS cars are 95 to 100 grand. Again, with modest miles, you know, we're talking 20 to 30,000 miles ish. And then again, the more common colors, you can probably negotiate that down a little bit better. But if you want a one-off or a unique color or something that's already been modded, a lot of the time people think that adds value. And so you're looking more, again, at that 100,000 mark or maybe a little higher. And then finally for the Ferrari California, they came out with the Ferrari California T, which is awesome. It was actually the first turbocharged Ferrari since the F40. So it's got a pretty cool historical lineage there. The V8's totally different, but the idea of just having a turbocharged Ferrari, and now they're putting turbos on everything. So they've gone away from, you know, a lot of manufacturers have gone away from V10s, V12s, et cetera, and they're going back to V8s and turbocharging them, or supercharging or whatever, right? They're they're force inductioning these things and giving them extra power rather than just leaving them naturally aspirated. And so the Ferrari California T is essentially the same car. You know, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like about the time they introduced the T model, they also facelifted the headlights and stuff like that. So there's a few minor visual upgrades or changes, but essentially it's the same car. I believe the engine's the exact same sans turbo. So, you know, again, that's going to be maybe a hair over 100-ish is probably where you're going to find them with modest to high miles. And again, for a Ferrari, high miles could be 40,000 miles. I'm not exactly sure. You know, I'm not an aficionado. I own a Ferrari. I never have. Would I love one? Yeah, it'd be fun to have in the garage. But at this point in life, right, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. And so I want something that's practical that I can use pretty much daily if I chose to. And the R8's all-wheel drive and all that stuff. I could drive it in the snow. I could drive it, you know, pretty much every day of the year and feel completely safe and in control 100% of the time. So that's important to me. But from a standpoint of, you know, ongoing value, right? That's the flip side of all this conversation, is all three of these cars had really high MSRPs, you know, 150,000 or more in a lot of cases, and have depreciated down to half that, right? Again, you can get an R8 for $70,000, you can get a Mercedes for $75,000, and you can get a Ferrari for $80,000. Literally, that's half the original MSRPs on all three of those cars. But as you get better models, as you get, you know, manuals versus automatics, as you get V10s instead of V8s, if you get turbocharged instead of naturally aspirated, all of these upgrades, you know, they do kind of appreciate the value of the same car. And from a depreciation standpoint, I don't think they're going to get a whole lot lower, right? We're talking about really crazy times right now in the auto industry. If I were to go buy a car, I'm going to get a 7% interest rate, maybe worse. And I have like 820 credit. I have phenomenal credit. And I'm still going to get 7 or 8% on a car loan right now. So that creates a little bit of a challenge, because if I want to go buy a $100,000 car, I'm paying 8% a year. That is a huge amount of money that now gets tacked onto my payment, right? My principal payment. And then, you know, insurance rates have gone up and all these things. Life is just kind of a mess right now. So unless you're a cash buyer, these are really hard cars to pay for and to attain, but they're out there. And that's kind of the point, is if you've got cash, you have a little more negotiation power, but at the same time, the seller knows if they're the cheapest car on the market, right? If I were to list my Audi R8 right now, and I pay very close attention to this, if I were to sell my Audi R8, my car right now is the only JetBlue metallic car on the market. There's no other JetBlue metallic cars available for sale right now in North America. So if I were to put this car on Auto Trader, or if I were to throw it on Car Gurus or whatever, that's a huge selling point, because if somebody wants this particular color, I can demand a little bit of a premium because there's just none other out there. And when I was looking for this car, it was one of maybe half a dozen, 4, 5, 6 of them available, all different, a couple different years, a couple different model or configurations. I love this color. So to me, the JetBlue metallic is what I wanted. I kind of discussed this a long time ago when I first bought the car, but when this car debuted at Le Mans as a promo demo futuristic Audi make and model, they debuted it and showed it for the very first time in JetBlue. So a lot of enthusiasts, it's burned into my mind. This car, the concept car being this color, has been burned in there, right? And so for me, kind of living out my dream of 15, 20 years ago, here we are. We've got this car in JetBlue. That's always the color I envisioned it. So to go and buy a black one wouldn't have been the same. To go and buy a silver one, yeah, Iron Man drove a silver one, but that's not the image that was burned into my mind. It's the JetBlue. So again, there's some desirability factors and things like that. And again, when I bought my car, I got a really good deal, and it was one of several in this color. But if I were to sell it today, knowing it's the only one in this color, maybe I can get a little more. I've also upgraded some carbon fiber panels and things like that didn't come on the car initially. So I've made the car more desirable. And from a timing standpoint, yeah, it could be more desirable. And to a cash buyer, they don't care if the interest rates are 8 or 9 or 10% because they've got $70,000. They're just going to cut somebody a check, right? So all in all, those are 3 really good cars that I don't think you'd get burned on if you were to buy one and enjoy it. I think you could probably buy one, put a few thousand miles on it, keep it a couple of years, and probably get out for the same price. And here's the cherry on top, right? If and when interest rates come back down, that opens up a whole new arena. That allows so many new buyers into the market, because if I don't have cash and I am reliant on a loan, I might not qualify if I don't have good credit, or if I don't make enough money, or if the loan to debt ratio is wrong. So if an 8% interest rate on a $90,000 car creates too high of a payment, I will not qualify. But if I've got a 2.5% interest rate on an $80,000 or $90,000 car, maybe I do qualify, right? So when interest rates fall, money gets cheaper. It kind of widens the amount of money that somebody can borrow, allowing cars to then appreciate again like they did 2 years ago, right? I did appreciation videos on the R8, on the Mustang, on my Raptor, on the Mach-E, right? All of our cars at one point were worth more than we paid. That's not so much the case anymore. They've all come back down, but it's also a desirability thing, right? If someone's going to go buy an F-150, not everybody has to have a Raptor, but if you've got to have a Raptor, you're willing to pay a premium. Not everybody needs an R8, but if you want an R8, you might be willing to pay a premium for the right color. Inventory's finally caught up on the Mach-E's, but when we first bought that thing, there was a wait list 1.5 miles long. So if we wanted to sell that thing right after buying it, we could have made some money. And it even held value the first year we owned it. On top of that, we got a tax break, right? So if we had sold that car a year in, it would have been almost what we paid for it, is what we could have sold it for. But then we got the tax incentive on top of that. So now we made money, right? So all in all these cars along the way have had their ups and downs, just like everything else. Interest rates are high right now, so it's a cash buyer's market. But the moment rates start to fall, you're going to see these cars that have maybe come down in value right now. My R8 is an excellent example of that. When I bought it, they were asking $82,900. I got it for $65,000, essentially. Now I've put more money into it. I bought an extended warranty, all the carbon fiber parts. I'm into it just a hair over $70,000. I've also had a car loan for 2 years, okay? It's at 2.9%. That's pretty cheap. So it's pretty cheap. So if I include some interest and all that stuff, shoot, guys, if I were to sell my R8 today for $75,000, I'd break even, right? I would recoup all the parts that I bought. It would recoup the cost of the warranty, which I've never had to use, right? Knock on wood. It would replace, or it would reimburse me essentially for, I bought new struts for the car. I have a second set of wheels and tires for the car. All that stuff included. I could literally hand it to the next owner, hand them the keys. They hand me a check for $75,000. I go down to the bank and pay off the balance. I have a bunch of cash left. I could do the math, and literally, even after paying interest, I would have broken even. I'd have driven this car for 27, 28 months, something like that, for no money, for no cost, right? Because I recouped everything. Now, again, I got a screaming deal. I bought way below what market was bearing at that time. They were asking $83,000. Got it for $65,000. Instant equity. I could have probably turned around and sold that car right away for $70,000 without much effort. But again, it wasn't the only JetBlue car on the market. So, and I wanted it, guys. That was, I digress. I wanted the car. That was the purpose of me buying it. It wasn't because I was planning on flipping it in a year or 2 or 5. It was because I wanted the car. I wanted the car for my garage. I wanted the car for the channel. I haven't utilized it quite as much as I intended to because life is busy, guys. I don't have more than 30 minutes a week to dedicate to this channel at this point because life's busy. I've got kids, work, wife, all the things. And so with what I have to give to you guys, I hope that you like this stuff. I ask every week, comment down below, tell me what you want to learn more about. I feel like we've done a lot of different topics, and I do have a few friends and family who give me feedback. They tell me, Josh, do this. Josh, talk about this. Here's an idea, do that. I love that. I do. I do not take offense. I appreciate it. I need it because I do run out of ideas. Things go stale, and I don't want that. I would love to keep doing this stuff. I would love to continue to put these videos out every week, and I want to make sure that you guys aren't bored by it. Hopefully it's informative. Hopefully you learn, maybe you don't have $75,000 today to go buy your supercar, but it's something that you want to do. Maybe you got a little golden nugget out of this, and maybe you're going to take that and share it with somebody else. I don't know. But I do ask that you guys like this stuff, subscribe, always, always, always comment down below and hit that notification bell. Most importantly, remember, make every investment you make be a good one. Till next time.